Imagination take over. So close your eyes. Should you happen to come across a small pond in the early morning before the sun's heat tends to kick up the winds, you may notice something special. Naturalists refer to it as mirrored stillness. Water so calm that it reflects the trees, the sky, the clouds, and all that is around the shores. The corresponding metaphor is that our bodies are like ponds. When we look at a small body of water, the image of calm settles into our unconscious and in turn promotes a deep sense of relaxation. Now, if you are a writer who's been lucky enough to have a book published, use your imagination to place your book cover where that pond is. See it? It's laying there in the middle of nowhere. Nobody knows it's there. Nobody picks it up. Nobody buys it. Nobody reads it. That's not pretty. That is horrible. It's time to open your eyes. Literally open your eyes. One way you can help to ensure that your book reaches more readers is to get reviews posted to popular websites like Amazon and Goodreads. Also, if you can get your book into the big libraries, you get a lot of readership. But the key to that is to get reviews also. Now imagine that same scenario from a few minutes ago, the book in the woods. I'm going to read a review to you. There's a story about a woman walking through the woods with her dog. After a few surprising events that can be metaphorically related to life in general, she eventually reaches the far side of the trees and gets back to her regular life. If that was a review, would that entice you to want to read the book? Probably not. It's kind of boring, it's kind of vague, ho-hum. Nothing really grabs the potential reader's ears or eyes. Now how about this review? This is a compelling and well-written story about a woman who is desperately trying to get to the far side of a vast wooded area. Written by an author who usually writes lovely prose that make the reader examine their own life's journey. She's accompanied by a large dog, but because of the trauma she has suffered immediately before her journey, she often finds herself in a fog, relying upon the guidance of the hound. I saw this as a metaphor for the grief I recently experienced when I lost my mother. I kept going, putting one foot in front of the other, but my head was in a fog, and I relied upon others to guide me. Like the woman in the story, I longed to get to the other side of the grief, but yet while I'm in the shade of the woods, I can't help but wonder if life is ever going to be any better again. Like me, the woman in the story stumbles, has physical pain, and feels guilty when she stops to enjoy a pleasant moment by a cool stream. There are lessons to be learned from something as simple as walking in the woods, and this book will inspire you to look deep inside for them. I would recommend the book for anyone who loves the simplicity of nature and recognizes the value of time to take to be alone with your thoughts. Okay, so that gives you a whole lot more in-depth information into the book and would make somebody maybe want to actually pick it up and read it versus just a short recap and yeah, it's a pretty good book. So, now other than the length of the two reviews, there are some specific differences. There was mention of what the writer usually writes and that she wrote a quality piece. It said that she wrote lovely prose and it was a well-written story. So that's one thing a good review will have. Another thing is that there were adjectives to describe the plot and a motivation for the protagonist. And this review has comments regarding how the reader related to the book and its themes and symbol. A recommendation to read the book was also included, and that's also very important. So, a review. It's basically a very subjective, depending upon the kind of book. So it's not always the same, obviously. But if the reader likes the characterization in the books, that might be what is highlighted. Or if the plot was what ruled the reader's mind, we're going to talk about that. And keep in mind that a book review is a diagnostic tool that explores the text's significance and relevance to the time and place in which a story takes place. A good review has most of these elements. And by the way, I'm going to give you handouts at the end that'll have all this stuff on it, so if you want to, you can have it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, the author's intent That's one thing that is interesting to know in a review. Kind of gives you an idea if they intend to tell, a fictional story, or if it's intent to be almost like true. If there's a theme, like a thematic issue of some sort that's covered, that's in a good review. And if there's symbols in the text, you want to know that. If the book is nonfiction or a memoir, the review may discuss the story's relevance to historical settings and may point out the author's expertise or credentials as an authority of the subject matter. The review will discuss the strengths or limitations of a book, in addition to whether the book will have long-lasting values or not. The book review may additionally address whether the author's tone is sympathetic or biased toward the subject, or fair and objective. In all, the book review is an analysis of the book, which is centered on the elements of the story, but it is not a summary. It's not the same as a book report like you wrote in school. Book reports simply rehash the story, while a book review is an examination of its contents. So they are very subjective and rely on what the reader sees. And not every reader is going to see the same thing. If you read any reviews on Amazon or Goodreads, you'll see that people see things totally different from the same book, but they see it with different eyes. So, in my mind, there are 4 kinds of reviews: negative, positive, bad, and good. So, a negative reviewer obviously is somebody that slams the book, they hate it, they insult it, they insult the book or the author or both. The positive reviewer gives you a glowing appraisal of the book and suggests others to read it. A bad review is actually simply a recap of the book, just a review, or just like a book report.
Summary.
A summary, yeah. That's not a review. You can read that on the back cover probably. Also, a bad review would be a comment saying how I know the author. That's going to get thrown out. Nobody's going to pay any attention to that, and on Amazon, they're going to wipe it out. It's not even going to be left on there. But a good review has certain elements, certain components, and I'm going to touch on 5 of them. It's a short overview of the story, because you basically do want to know what the story's about. You're just not going to tell them the entire plot, but you're going to want to tell them a little bit about it. Some reviewers go into great details. It's fine. Sometimes the longer the better, but a lot of reviews are pretty short. You're going to want information about the main character, because usually that protagonist leads the purpose of the story, and they examine the goals and why the book is written in the first place. The pacing of the book is important. You want to know if it's a fast-paced book, if it's one you just can't put down, or if it's slow and drags, or if it has a lot of deep meaning that you have to ponder as you're reading it. Those sort of things need to be in the review. Any additions that make the story enjoyable, like some books have recipes or historical facts or extra things stuck in there. And the reader's opinion of the writer's skill and knowledge and research of the topic. This is something that writers may not like to know. If they get one that slams them and they think that people aren't happy with the way they've written the book. But in truth, any time that a writer gets any kind of criticism, whether or not it's good or bad, as to their technique, it's important, because you may not be writing according to anybody's rules of writing, but you want to know what they are, and you have the license in to either follow or not. So, along with reviews, there's also the 5-star rating system that you see often on like Amazon and Goodreads. That's different than a review. Now, for instance, you probably all read or heard of The Count of Monte Cristo. On Goodreads, there's almost 500,000 ratings for The Count of Monte Cristo. Some of them only have 1 star, but the average is 4.17. But there's only 13,000 reviews. But obviously nobody's going to bother to read all 13,000 anyway, but that's 98% more ratings than reviews. So it's important to do both if you're going to take the time, but as writers, it's important that you actually do a lot of reading and then write a review online. And it helps you as a writer. It makes you look at the story with wide eyes to get the purpose of the book and to examine the contents more than just reading it for pleasure. As a writer, you should be looking at all kinds of meaning and relevance to the story, why that the author wrote it, and compare it to your own style of writing or learn from it. You can, in your own writing, then you'll learn how to create tension, reveal a theme, arouse feelings and purpose, and pay close attention to how books are crafted. Endorsements are different than reviews. You may kind of confuse those, but endorsements are basically just something that a famous person or another author or agent writes a quip about it. It's not usually a full review of the whole story. They may just talk about basic information like they enjoyed it, it was good, it was bad, but you're not going to get a lot from an endorsement. The number of books published in the U.S. every day is 3,500. Therefore, it's vitally important to get your book noticed. And I've learned that once it's published, it may be too late to begin thinking about how to get good reviews. I've got 5 published books and hardly any reviews because I did not seek out reviews to begin with. I've learned you have to do that first. Before you even get that book published, you need to be following bloggers, you need to be paying attention to who writes reviews on Amazon, you need to follow what's going on and get into the right people, get in their circle. Suzanne's going to talk to you more about how to get reviews, and I'll come back if there's more she leaves out.
Thank you for telling us how to write a review, and thank you for this opportunity to think through the process of creating books. This was very helpful to me, just to go back through and see which books of mine did have good reviews and where they came from, and I even noticed that I had never paid attention to Goodreads, and I had 185 reviews on one book that I didn't know about. So sometimes it's really important to just stop and look at what you're doing and step back for a minute and see what your reviewers are saying. 500 years ago, to own a book was an impossibility unless you were royalty, a monk, or extremely...
Can you move the mic just a little closer?
Sure, is that better?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
much better.
Thank you, Marilyn. 500 years ago, to own a book was an impossibility unless you were royalty, a monk, or extremely rich. They were not for the common folk, and people relied on the storyteller or the priest to inform and entertain them. Spiritual books remain the best-selling throughout the ages. But today, the powerful collaboration of Amazon through KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing, and CreateSpace make it possible for the average writer to communicate around the world and sell their books and ideas. Amazon has opened the door to writers at every stage of their career, given them an audience, and showed them how to change and how to correct their message. The services of Author Central, KDP, and technology experts allow even the beginning author to succeed. Amazon makes money, and so does the writer, but selling your books is not their focus or their goal. Amazon makes money if they will help you succeed if you're continually reaching out, getting reviews, buying products and services, and optimizing yours and thereby Amazon's search engines. They do not want to be gamed, and they're continually tightening up their algorithm. Here's my experience with Amazon. In 2011, I wrote 15 books for the promotion of the new Kindle. Amazon had contracted with Nation 9, a small local publisher, to produce content for the new Kindle. 50 popular stories that would demo its features. These stories were proven in popularity and already in the public domain. I summarized fairy tales, mysteries, and popular folk tales no longer under copyright. The publisher then had them illustrated, animated, and translated into 8 languages. They formed the base content for giving away with the purchase of the new Kindle. Since then, generations of Kindles have been developed and distributed, with millions of ebooks now available to play on them. I still receive royalty checks from these small writings. The most popular is Sherlock Holmes in Spanish. I used that same publisher to produce my first novel, The Bride Price, in 2012. The promotion started with a giveaway, careful attention to grouping keywords, and a professional edit and cover art. We found that for every review, it took sales of 100 books. The Bride Price was my first novel, and I had publicity in local newspapers. Suzanne wrote in the Patch. I got a good coverage in the Courier Herald. I had enthusiasm to go out and group my friends and ask them to write a review or to tell them about it. The book sales were going to the education of orphans in Africa, the profits from them, and through our charity Village Steps. I didn't pay much notice to the social media and the careful search engine optimization that were helping this novel climb in rankings. At one point, it was number 7 in its niche on Amazon. Good thing I numbered these. Meanwhile, I was writing away on my second novel, The Academy. I had joined another critique group, encouraged friends to write reviews, and was happy at the nice artwork lining the wall of my office. Reviews on The Bride Price continued to climb. I attended a writers' conference and then another and watched the reviews on the first novel slowly mount up. By this time, we had given away around 10,000 books. I am talking about ebooks, and reviews came in from various parts of the country. They also came in from South Africa, UK, and parts of Europe. At around this time, there were a few writers, but the second novel languished, time to take a class. At around this time, there were a few writers giving courses on how to make a profit on your writing. I was game. I took the course from Howard Van Ness on how to increase my platform on the internet. His emphasis was change your niche, change your keywords, and move up in the rankings. His partner had edited my book, so there was no discussion that the content of the book might be the problem. It was all in how we addressed the Amazon algorithm. I needed to be an Amazon bestseller, and the way to do that, confirmed by a class I took with Maggie at the Writers' Conference, was to get my keywords to draw people in. I pulled out all the stops. I reclassified my book as African American romance and inserted those words that stirred the physiology of the reader. Within days, my book was categorized with the following titles: The Real Housewives of Section 8, The Mad Humper, The Bitch of Detroit, and I've given you the milder titles. The actual title with bitch as the keyword was much hotter than that. The Academy was recommended by a Sunday school, selected by a book club in Harlem and a few other locations, but these came earlier before my change in the niche and the change in the keywords came out. They withdrew their interest. Sales did not soar. I had substituted the keywords from the description of The Bride Price with incest, rape, sex trafficking, and other emotive words, but the tactic was backfiring. Imagine the disappointment of the steamy readers wanting romance and getting a literary fiction, the kind they jokingly say you pay people to read. My editor was giving me encouragement. He said the book, a passing grade in the Academy, was better written than the first one, but the third was also strong. He couldn't really tell me if it was the best time to launch a third book, when that would be. By now I was thinking I should go through every review and see what the consumers were saying. I noticed certain words came up many times, and that they were the same praise and the same criticisms that my critique groups had given. I began to write down the words and compile a list. Meanwhile, I kept writing and fortified my confidence by speaking to local groups. The largest was a conference of 200 women leaders in the education field. They were enthusiastic, but after selling a dozen or so paperback books, all I had brought, I realized the chance of these busy people getting to their computer and writing a review was slim. I had their applause and had informed them, but they would do well to read the book. They would do well to read the book, much less review it. I had not imparted to them the importance of doing this. I had not gotten their permission to email them. I had not obtained their contacts or followed up on their enthusiasm. Once lecture and lunch were over, so were the sales of my book. I did receive several invites to speak again to individual clubs and churches. I then made an audible recording through ACX on Amazon. I liked it, but I have no knowledge if anyone ever bought it. It did give me some leverage with Amazon because they began to put small ads on the Kindle of my books, which has continued intermittently. The voice I selected for the narration was British Jamaican, which pleased me, but a friend said she could not understand when she played the sample. I corrected this by having a calm-voiced female narrate the bride price. I do not know if sales came from this recording. I don't know how to trace them. The fourth novel, Consider the Lily, was now finished. Edited by my critique groups, I was now involved in 2 more groups, and I chose a generic cover, realizing that if it showed up well on the author page on Amazon, that was probably more important than getting a more artistic cover. I don't know if this is true. I'm testing it. I thought my writing had improved, not because I liked what I wrote more than the other manuscripts, but because I was making the grammar more conventional and leaving behind my goal of having the community be more of a chorus and staying with the non-descriptive mode of African fiction. This book came out in April of 2015. Amazon gave me a subtitle, The Lost Girls of Africa, which I liked, but I never authorized it. I also noticed that Amazon was now asking me to recommend other books for readers based on my new novel. Realizing this could be a good tool, I went back and reviewed several books I had read that were similar in content or voice, then reviewed them, and when I purchased any book, I mentioned my own or bought an email edition of it. Result, Popular Books now appeared as buyer of Tribes of Hattie also bought Bride Price or Consider the Lily. This has only recently been initiated, so I'll have to see what effect it has. All of my books had handwritten reviews mailed to me. I really appreciate the time and thought that went into these, but I have no idea how they can be incorporated into my review process to aid my rankings. One 96-year-old remarked that Lily Wonder was the most disgusting female she had ever read. She has read hundreds of books and compared her loathing of the girl to that she felt for Humbert Humbert in Lolita. High praise from my mother. Another woman, this one from Mozambique, said she loved Lily so much she can't wait for her next adventure. She sent me a hand-braided rug that she had made. She does not have a computer, so her review will never be capitalized on, but I save it for my encouragement when writing seems like work. My most treasured reviews come from readers who said the bride price changed their heart. One woman was planning on leaving her husband. She said after reading the book, she decided to see him differently and to love him more. The second novel, The Academy, inspired a graduate student in nursing at the University of Washington to go to Africa for her practicals. She in turn inspired me to place the graduates of the third book in a nursing school in Malawi, in southern Africa. Degas once wrote, "Art is not what we see, but what we allow others to see." I would like to close with an encouragement to take a book from Marilyn or myself or both and write a review. You could even make it a sweetheart review on the 25th, as Paul pointed out, and post them on Amazon. This will affect our ratings and also make you part of the creative process. I've printed out the following suggestions for how to work with Amazon to accelerate your book sales, and putting this together should give you the launch strategy Marilyn has described to you. Should give you a good start in promoting your art. I have about 15 items here. Form email lists of friends, colleagues, fans, family. Let them know about your upcoming publication. Anticipate when your book will launch and prepare them. Join a critique group and get their commitment to read your novel when it is complete and review it. Align yourself with book clubs. Prepare a question section at the back of your books. Insert an ask for reviews in each book you produce. Mention your other books. Give away books on Amazon or BookBub. This will drive up sales. And BookBub will not take a book unless it has at least 7 reviews. In fact, you'll need more than that now. The algorithm has changed quite a bit. Put book on social media, keep announcements coming, and add value by giving away some paperbacks. Let your local bookstore know your book is available. Give them reviews on social media, bookstore reviews. Have gatherings there for readings. Review books by other authors. Be available for comments. Respond to reviewers and start discussions. Your SEO. Change up your keywords and use phrases to increase the words that you can use and that people will search by. You can use, they said you can only use 7 keywords, but you can put those into phrases. I see some people gaming the system a little bit by putting Stephen King book list as one of the phrases. I don't think that's going to work too long, but it's working right now for some of the authors. Create a synopsis and a one-line summary of each book. Have it on the tip of your tongue. Imagine your audience of one, the person you're writing to connect with. Fascinate and delight that sole person with your story. They will tell the world. Read every day. Write every morning before you do anything else. Enjoy the process. It is a privilege. Enjoy the conferences, workshops, and critique groups available to you. But remember when you read about the gold rush, more money was made selling supplies than was ever panned. Stephen King is not holding seminars on how to game Amazon. Thank you.
Suzanne? I have a few more ideas on how to get a review. If you're interested in getting your books in the King County Library, I have a handout on how you can do that. But one of the easiest ways, I guess, to get your books in the library is to get really good, strong reviews. And they suggest Kirkus, Kirkus. I researched that one a little bit, and you have to pay $400 for that. So I didn't do that one. Book List, Publishers Weekly, and the Seattle Times Sunday Northwest Book Review section. If you can get your book reviewed by them, you have a good chance of getting it in the library. And with, I don't know, if there's 20 or 30 locations of the King County Library alone, and if they would buy a couple copies of your books for each one, that'd be kind of a coup for most of us.
So how do you do that?
I have a handout.
I could add to I've gotten a hold of, I don't know what his position was. I think he was in Issaquah with the King County Library System.
Uh-huh.
And he sent, this is what we'd like, and some of those things sound familiar to what he sent. The only difference was I didn't want to pay $200 for anything, so I had just basically submitted the ones that were on Amazon reviews, and they want a synopsis, and they want the title and publication stuff.
Right.
But there's a whole deal,
Right.
and they ended up bought 6 books. That's
Great.
like the same kind of thing to Pierce County. You don't hear a word from them. So it's interesting.
Paul, you have a question?
Well, as a former special librarian
Yes.
and in the music publishing business, I know that Publisher Weekly requires you to send in information about the book 6 months before it's published.
Right.
So
That's one thing that you have to keep in mind if you're going to try to have a successful book. You got to do a lot of background before you ever get to the point it's on the shelf.
But you're sending books to library magazines or review events, and whether you can do it to New York Times, I don't know, but I know Library Journal.
Yeah.
A lot of libraries buy from the reviews in Library Journal, so you got to send your book there, and hopefully it will get reviewed.
Right. Okay. On these gold handouts, I've got, I think, 15 or 20 of the pages, so afterwards I'll hand you those. But basically, there's a few basic requirements. You know, they wanted a published book that's got a strong binder. You know, they don't want the coils because that's going to fall apart. It has to be glued. It has to be sturdy. So that's kind of a basic requirement. But then you also have to have the ISBN number, and the price has to be stated on the book jacket or on the book. And the title page has to clearly state the author, the title, the publisher, the date of publication. So just the basic professional publication. But then it lists those places to get your book reviewed. And if you don't do that, there are other ways to get it into the library, like Paul suggested, but you can read this more thoroughly, and it's a, you know, you send them a copy, you send them, you know, you want to tell them who the audience is, who it's meant for, about you yourself, the author, what your qualifications are, what other books you've written, who, when the book was published, all that kind of stuff. It's in this handout. So that will get you more information, but you got to start way before you actually get it published. Another way you can get reviews is with bloggers. There's a lot of bloggers that simply only do book reviews, but I found out you can't just send an email to a blogger and expect them to reply. You have to follow them, and in your following of them, and you have to make comments or read what they've read and then comment back. Be involved with that blogger, and you'll have a greater chance of them wanting to review your book. And most of them, of course, only review certain genres of books. They're not going to review everything. If they only read romances, don't send them a Western, because they're not going to review it. So in the process, you're going to end up sending a lot of free books to people, but it's valuable to send those free books out into the world and get people's responses on them. Otherwise, you're not going to have anybody that knows it. It's going to be that book in the forest where nobody sees it. So I have a legal size handout here that's got my notes on it, and all of these different bloggers, different websites that will do reviews. There's like Pacific Book Review. On WordPress, there's a directory of all the bloggers, and that's where you can go to find a lot of the bloggers. Hollywood Book Reviews, Easy Book Reviews, Dog-Eared Reviews, Midwest Book Review, the Book Reporter, and then there's some on Kindle. Kindle is obviously where a lot of books are bought anymore are the ebooks, and for those of us who like to actually have a book and we don't understand that, there are people that prefer to get their books that way. So I think, are there any more questions? Paul?
One other comment, and I successfully sold about 1,000 books, my first one, by direct mail. Mm-hmm. I knew my audience. I sent letters to them. They had a piece of paper to do something with, and that worked.
Okay.
And so
Yeah, I sold a lot of my books because of contacts on Facebook, and I would stick them in an envelope. I paid all the postage. I never asked anything in advance, and I sold them to my friends and family for discount rates just to get them out there and start selling a few. But it's frustrating when my friends and family are the only ones who buy them. Yes, Joanne?
Okay, now, you sell that to your cousin. Can they write a review for Amazon? Or does it have to be just somebody that bought a book?
Suzanne can answer that. I think you can.
It's difficult to get someone to, proximity is what makes the difference in people paying or writing a review. If they've pulled it up on ebook and they've read it, they're much more likely to be computer knowledgeable. If your relatives do not have access to a computer, the likelihood is small, and they will look at who your, my daughter wrote a review, and they dismissed it because she was my daughter. So they do check on the connections that you have. They don't want anyone gaming the system. At the beginning, people would have many calls come into Amazon, not calls, but emails and things to Amazon, and they would just create a surge of interest, which then Amazon tightened up on who was a valid review. And some people will say I'm a purchaser, because you don't only have to purchase it through Amazon. You could buy it through CreateSpace or through a bookstore or whatever. So they will consider those. If it's somebody that you've emailed all the time and they're on your Facebook, be careful, because they may just pull it up and say, no, they're not in real estate we call it arm's distance transaction.
But if somebody bought the book someplace other than Amazon, they can still write a review for Amazon.
That's right.
I think the important thing is to let them know that you purchased the book somewhere else, that you are a verified purchaser, just not an Amazon purchaser. Because if you read the reviews, in small red letters it says verified purchaser. So if you're going to go on and write a review for one of my books, which by the way, there's some free ones back there. If you promise to write a review, take a book. But if you're not buying it, obviously, so there's no way for Amazon to say that you're a verified purchaser. But try it. Try writing in there that this book was given to me so I could review it. Be honest about it, and hopefully they won't kick your review out. But
Okay.
yeah. Any more questions?
Another
Yes.
thing about Amazon and reviews is you can't, if you are not a purchaser or a user of the site, then they won't let you review.
Really?
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of people that went there, but then since they had not purchased anything on Amazon for a long time or ever, then they weren't able to write a review. I was told by one of the customer service people that if this person that wants to write a review would even look maybe at a book cover or another product that was on Amazon and write a review on that, or make a comment on it, then they would allow them to comment on your books. I don't know.
You have to be a verified Amazonian.
Yeah.
I have to say that the review that you wrote for me still stands as the #1 review, positive review on the bride price. And it's been on there for 3 or 4 years now.
Wow.
So that's really nice. It really makes a difference. The other thing they say that they do is they look at your exit site. If you go to a person's book and each time the person who goes and looks at it then leaves Amazon site, you'll be seen as a negative. So you want to avoid that.
So say that again, Suzanne.
If you go to a book site, let's say you went to read the Mad Humper, and then you left the Amazon site and didn't buy the book, they would say, oh, there's an exit. And then if that happened several times where people looked at that book title and then left the site, did not buy, you'd be seen as a negative. So that's one of the...
So a person should look at a book and something else, and then they can exit. Okay. And I wrote a book I wrote a review for Consider the Lily, which was Suzanne's last one. They only left it up for like a day and it was gone. I actually purchased the book, but because she's my Facebook friend, I think they knew that we were friends, so they took all credence out of it and they discarded it. So that's going to happen to some of the reviews, but it's still worthwhile to try. And like I said, it's important for you as a writer to write reviews because it makes you stronger as a writer. Sabrina, did you have a question? No. Joanne?
On Amazon, if you have given your publisher and then it goes to them, the list of those keywords, and there's something really wrong with the keywords that Amazon has interpreted, have you ever had that experience?
You can change the words up to 7 times. You can change them monthly easily, but
So
you
how
can
do
change
you
them
do
even
that?
more often. You just go on the back side of the of Amazon and you pull up the keywords, and you can group them in phrases as well. And there is one way that one of the, we call her the Gold Rush people, one way that she says to make sure that all your books always appear is to spell your name backwards on the site. And then when the search goes through, it'll pull up every book that has that name spelled backwards. So that's one way they game the system. But another way is to this isn't a game, but this is something, if you go through and you see a positive review, have yourself or somebody else check it off. It says, was this review helpful to you? So we'll give it a check yes. And if it was a nasty, nasty review, check no. So that just helps you to them to sort it out because they go by lists. Their keyword, I didn't go into any of the technicalities because you can find them all on the Amazon algorithm, which is A9. You can look up A9. That's their product search algorithm. What they want is they want that we will continue to buy things on their website. If you have something you need to buy, even if it's as simple as a barbecue fork, buy it on Amazon. They track every action, and they will even know where your cursor is hovering on the page. So if you go to a page and you're thinking about buying Paul's book and you hover it over it, or you go back there a second time and hover over it, and then you buy something, they see that as a strong hit. They love to see anything that is live and that creates interest in the Amazon site, such as videos. One single picture that's very clear and that can easily be reduced to a thumbnail and still is very clear is very positive for them. They tend to connect the data, and as she said, if I'm reviewing her book and she's reviewing my book and we're patting each other on the back, we're going to throw them out. So they do want to have bona fide reviewers for these books. It's not going to work to just put a bunch of them in. Even the grammar will show up as being the same person that's done it.
So how do you educate a reviewer to write a good review?
When you see that little, read those and reviews that are helpful. So I'm going to read you a part of it. I love reading this author's books and look forward to her next book.